I think. Tells me that now when recording happens. Yeah, so last session was good. We got that sort of philosophy of the safe system, and we started pondering how we're managing a transport network and where we're prioritizing things. We talked a bit about the kinetic energy and forces the human body can handle. We talked about broad elements of the safe system and how we achieve road safety. And this session, we're going to delve further into some of the specifics of the road and roadside environment and how we can alter that to get better outcomes. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully there. Excellent. Okay, so hopefully that's working. We won't join. Now, I was told there was a little lag between me swapping slides and speaking, so I'll try to be conscious of that as we go. Right. So this module is all about delving further into those kinetic energy thresholds of different crash types. And we're going to do that at intersections. First of all, we're going to spend a good bit of time talking about intersections. We're going to identify characteristics of intersections that align highly with safe system principles and I suppose don't align highly with safe system principles. And identify characteristics of mid-block locations that align highly with safe system principles and don't align highly. And so mid-block is just basically that term for anything between intersections. Now, there's a little term I'm using here, which I want to just touch on before we keep going. You'll notice I talk about aligns highly with safe system principles. I don't say is safe system or is not safe system. And the reason for that is that the safe, it's sort of a spectrum, really. Highly aligned with safe system principles, very much not so well aligned with safe system principles. And the reason for that is, you will see as you do an assessment that things can be really pretty well aligned, but they're not perfect. And one of the big issues I've had over my time here is this initial entry of the safe system. People were talking about it like a binary thing. And they would say, oh, we can't do that project. It's not safe system. And people would be like, well, yes, it is. No, it's not. And then we had these debates. And what we were sort of at was that it was something that was very well aligned with safe system principles, but could be a little bit better. And then there was this debate. But they were talking about it as not safe system and safe system. And then we had people coming out with all sorts of things. We will only do safe system projects, and it was kind of slightly meaningless. I mean, I was definitely jumped onto sort of taking advantage of this confusion a little bit when I left the Victorian Road Authority and started up Safe System Solutions, which is because of this desire to find these safe system solutions as such. And a better, more accurate company name would have been highly aligned safe system features, but it doesn't sort of roll off the tongue as well. But anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. But the other thing you'll find is when you do a safe system assessment, it's about trying to get the best alignment with safe system principles. And you'll see it scores it, and it's a dial, really, a spectrum. Don't forget to count your wallies, of course. We talked last time about the road safety audit, the design review, sort of that independent design review, the safe system assessments, and the safety and design and DDA. So I won't go through that again, just to say that any of you that are currently road safety auditors, or you've done that sort of training, you'll be sort of covering off some of the stuff you'll be really quite comfortable with. But there are definitely things that are outside of that. But let's start with intersections. Now, intersections obviously, well, maybe not obviously, intersections are a very, I suppose, direct point on the road network where risk spikes. And that's because obviously you've got conflict points, so you've got the ability for those crashes to happen. There's a few other little things that increase risk at intersections. There's often a lot of fixed hazards around intersections, which we don't think about too much. And often we're trying to, those are bottlenecks in the traffic flow. And so we're trying to widen and push as much through as possible in these locations, which means often space is compromised for potentially other road users apart from vehicles or even vehicles themselves. So pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists can sometimes be slightly compromised in these situations. Monash University Accident Research Centre in 2010, as part of the sort of baseline research work they were doing on intersections, came up with these sort of initial principles for intersection design. Now, some of that's fairly sort of common sense, or some people think a little bit out of my control, but let's have a look at these. So first thing they're saying is, well, can we get fewer vehicles? It's a bit of a slightly different take on the way we look at road safety, but very legitimate. And that would change the exposure to crashes, because there's less people exposed, be that less, so pedestrians being exposed to less crashes from vehicles or vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. Fewer intersections, again, changes the exposure there. We're sort of lessening the exposure to crashes because there's fewer actual conflict points out there. Now, you may be saying, well, if you make it fewer intersections, people still need to get out and get to where they're going. So maybe we're just pushing all of that traffic to another intersection. And that's absolutely the case often. But if you can be pushing it to a safer intersection, that's a very good thing. Now we get into sort of each intersection themselves. Fewer conflict points per intersection. Now, a conflict point, for those who aren't familiar with that term, is simply a way that you can crash at an intersection. So I'll show some conflict point diagrams later, but many ways that, say, if you've got vehicles going through and through and through and through, well, there's immediately 4 conflict points where the lines cross. But then, we've got the right turners, so we've got some more conflict points there. So if you can lessen that by restricting movements or altering the intersection form, we're getting better alignment with safe system principles. Once you've gone through that, then you're starting to look at what are the impact speeds and angles and the biomechanical tolerable levels, which we've been talking about last module, and are we meeting these sort of thresholds? So for vehicle-to-vehicle crashes, 90 degrees, are we at 50 kilometers per hour or less than 50 kilometers per hour? So are these right angle crashes going to happen at less than 50 kilometers an hour? Where you can get a bit more angle on that crash, it can sort of go up a bit. Now, the reasons for that are sort of twofold. If you can crash at a bit of this angle, right, it's more of a bouncing off type thing. A bit of old vectors from physics, but you sort of bounce off. Your energy is dissipated into the environment rather than directly into that other vehicle. Okay? And likewise, if you can move it to a bit more head-on in terms of the angle, then you're engaging some of those frontal vehicle features that we know are quite powerful in terms of airbags, seat belts, crumple zones, the front of the vehicle. So if you can do that, we're somewhere between 50 to 70. So maybe you're around the 60 kilometer an hour mark, we can sort of say within just on our borders of tolerable levels. So pedestrians, cyclists and motorcyclists, we really can't be going above 30 kilometers per hour. That's sort of our threshold speeds. Now, often we want it to see vehicle speeds lower than that, but we have that as a sort of benchmark threshold speed. Now, if you can't achieve the above, you need to look for ways to mitigate risk, but we'll talk about some of that later. But you can operate intersections at quite high speed, but the way you need to do it is to accelerate vehicles. So if you can accelerate a vehicle and another vehicle is coming up here, the crash can happen at very high speeds because it's the change in speed that we're talking about. And so that's how on-ramps on freeways work. So the initial crashes on on-ramps on freeways are very safe. They're very safe crashes because the energy transfer to the human is so low. Yes, you need to think about secondary crashes, where they're going to go after that, any rear end crashes that result after people slow down and stop and the like. But in terms of that initial crash, that's quite within tolerable levels. And so I have lots of these different diagrams, tables and things that pop up just to keep you calibrated in terms of, well, what's like survivable generally and what's not survivable generally for different crash types. And there are some tools and models available. One of them is ChemX or XChemX, which is the kinetic energy management model. Now, this is like a particular bit of software that you could use to analyze an intersection in minute detail about the forces, the kinetic energy, so the vehicles, the masses and the like. This is far beyond what you would need to do in a safe system assessment. It's so detailed. You don't need to go into that. You just generally have a look at the speeds, the angles crashes can happen, the mass of the vehicles going through, and you make a judgment call within a safe system assessment based on that information. You could be precise about getting the angles of crashes that could happen if you wanted, or you could just have a general feel for it and say, okay, we've got vehicles coming out here. That's about a 90-degree crash, and okay, there's more angle on that one, so that's somewhere in between. And I know the 90-degree one, about 50 kilometers an hour is the threshold. The other side of the road, probably about 60, because if they crash as they're turning out, that's a much more friendly crash, and you're starting to get a bit of a feel for it. The secondary crash risk that I mentioned there is also important. So when vehicles crash at an intersection, the mass of vehicles will move, obviously, the physics of it. But you also have vehicles that come in and they maybe clip the front of the vehicle and spin off. They clip the back of the vehicle and they spin off. They avoid the vehicle that's pulled out and they leave the road. And so this bit of research that was done by, it's an Ostrodes bit of research done out of CASA. They basically plotted a whole lot of crashes at intersections, which were the secondary crashes or the runoff road crashes. And you see, and they plotted them all onto the same axis. But you see vehicle here, traveling in, that's the intersecting point. And you can see, well, I hope it's quite obvious to you that crashes mainly happening out these ways in terms of secondary crashes and runoff road crashes at intersections. I don't know whether actually research was required for that because it's pretty obvious, but anyway, it was done and then they came up with a pretty graph there. So do start thinking back to these. For vehicle-to-vehicle impacts, 40 is all okay, 50 is 90 is our sort of absolute limit, more angle on it. You can go up to the 60, 70 is really our rear ends and head-on direct crashes. It's very hard to run anything above 80 if that's that change in speed.
Ken, sorry, could you just jump back to the previous slide and tell us what the colours there are?
So it's just simply the percentage of the crashes that land in these cells. So the darker red means the percentage of secondary crashes that were in there. So 20 to 25% in this heavy red, and another 15% in these two, and less in there, and less in there. And then you get a very few sort of up to 5% sort of land, or very low numbers in these greener ones. If that makes sense. On that, when you realign the axes of the vehicles crashing, so vehicle. So like these ones, for example, they would be somehow, this vehicle's clipped off and run that way, or avoided out that way and struck there. Any other questions?
No, not at the moment. Thank you.
Keep them coming in.
Don't count the Wally again. Oops, oopsies.
Oh yeah, okay. So if we go back to a slide, yeah, don't count it again. Just count the original time we get there. Uh-oh, what have I done now? Okay, let's keep going. Well, actually, let's get you doing something for a Friday morning / afternoon, depending on where you are. Okay, I'm going to give you a little exercise to do here, and it's all about redesigning an intersection to get higher alignment with safe system principles. And this is our intersection. Okay. Let me give you a bit of background info about it. This is a major arterial highway. It carries 20,000. Oh, lost it. Sorry, bear with me. What the hell I did that? Okay. It carries 20,000 vehicles a day. Okay, 20,000 vehicles a day, and at 10% commercial vehicles. So quite an arterial road happening there. We've got a side road here, and it has 1,200 vehicles a day, so lower, and just takes the rubbish trucks. It does have occasional buses going down there because there's a school down the road here, about 400 meters down the road. There's a bus stop here because this is a bus route as well. We've got a shared path here, so pedestrian and cyclist path. This is like a drainage structure, so water goes through and out there. We've got service road, two-way service roads here. Vehicles can go both ways in there. This is residential, and this is sort of parkland flood area, I think. I think it floods, that's why it's sort of unbuilt on. 2 lanes in each direction, obviously. Right turn slot there. It's got lighting. Got a sort of what is called a Danish offset crossing there, which is like a Z crossing. So you walk in and you walk down a bit. Interestingly, I would say it's a Danish random, like off the topic here, but it's the wrong way around. I would like to see Danish offsets the other way around, so you walk to traffic always when you're trying to cross. So I would like to have seen it like that. But that's, now we're just starting to be very picky, aren't we? Sorry, I'm going to erase that. Not sure if people follow me there. So it would be nicer if you walk towards traffic and then cross. I think that drainage structure is causing them some challenges in doing that. What else have we got? That's our intersection. I'll show you a couple of street view style photos. So there you go. You can see there's the bus stop over there. Vehicles coming out, 2 lanes in each direction. Looking from the other way, there it is again. There's the drainage structure. It drains out to there. Bit of a shoulder, bit of bike lane there. The speed limit is 70 kilometers per hour, and it is 50 kilometers per hour default speed limit on the side road. So that's our sort of scenario. Now, what I want you to do is come up with some ideas to redesign, change the intersection or any of the, operations or anything else you would like to change to get us higher alignment with safe system principles. Now, I kind of want to let you have free rein on this, but I'm going to make it a little more real world, and I'm going to put some constraints on it. So, your first constraint is a budget. So you have $2 million to spend. Your second constraint is that we need to maintain full access at this intersection. Not necessarily the service roads, but people coming from this direction need to be able to get in. People coming from this direction need to be able to get in. People coming out need to be able to go both ways. Okay? So, because I know you're going to think back and say, oh, Ken said that. Muark said the first thing would be less vehicles, and the second thing was less intersections. Could we just close this intersection? And that would be a good line of thinking. But in this scenario, we have to maintain that access route. The community consultation's been done. It's far too far around to go any other way. So $2 million, you have to keep it open. And the last one is that you have to operate in the current political and organizational climate in which you work. So if you're working for a local council, you're thinking your local council or state authority, or you're a consultant, think about some of the clients you work for and what they've got to do. So if you're proposing something that's quite radical or extreme, I want a bit of a plan on how you're going to sort of get that through as well. What are some of the messaging or the ways that you might try to move that through? So apart from those 3 constraints, I'm not too concerned with what you would like to do. All I want to know is what you're planning, but also, will it alter the exposure to crashes, the likelihood of crashes, or the severity of crashes? So if you were to say, for example, I would like to do a grade separation, like a flyover. So we call it a grade separation of the grade. And so you would say, I want to do a grade separation, and it's going to change the exposure to crashes. So grade separation, exposure. Now, you obviously can't do a grade separation because it's going to cost you like $30 million, and you've only got $2 million. Probably going to cost you more than $30 million. And then on that, I am like your automatic cost estimator. So should you go, I'd like to do this, but I don't know, I have no clue how much a grade separation costs, you can just write into the chat cost estimation or cost of grade separation. And I will immediately tell you a cost of a grade separation. So if you want to, check out a few costs, just type them in, and I'll cost them for you straight on the spot. So at this point, I will take questions on clarifying the task, make sure everybody understands it. We want to get as high alignment with safe system principles as possible, which flows out to basically, we want to eliminate death and serious injury at this intersection going forward. Now, let's see if anybody is asking any questions.
They sure are, Ken, and they want to take advantage of your amazing automatic cost estimation services. Can you tell us, is there a heavy pedestrian presence here? Besides the bus stop, are there any other trip generators for pedestrians and also cyclists?
Really good question. Okay, so the bus, yes. The school also generates some pedestrian activity from the residential areas down this way, coming through. A few on the shared path crossing, a few from this sort of general catchment. They can't come down here and they cross. But we're talking sort of around 30 pedestrians a day really cross here at most.
And cyclists?
So cyclists, again, there's a small number of sort of commuter cyclists and kids on bikes here, very sort of like handful that actually cross here. And then this is one of those routes which gets the lycra-clad crew out training on the Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and occasional morning and afternoon ride. And then a few commuter cyclists as well, but it's not a heavily cycled route at this stage either.
Okay, thank you. Is the tree native vegetation?
No.
Okay. Could you give us a cost for traffic lights, please?
Yep. So signalisation of this intersection, plus the consulting and different checks and project management is $1.55 million.
Okay, so that was signalisation, 1.55 million. What about a roundabout?
Yep. So this is a B double route. So a roundabout to meet the Austroads Guide to Road Design, Part 4. Is Part 4 roundabouts? Somebody will correct me if I got that wrong. 4 or 4A. Anyway, roundabouts. The size of it is large due to the swept path requirements, and it's going to cost you $4.85 million. You cannot afford that, a full-size roundabout.
Okay, 4.8 million for a full-size roundabout.
Yeah, and the reason it's so expensive is that you've got to acquire land, so you've got to buy people's properties, you've got to move services, you've got to move the drainage structure, and there's a lot of civil works associated.
Okay, and it was Part 4C. Of course, somebody knew. I might give that to more. No, 4B. Oh, I was about to give you a prize too, Archimald.
I was going to say it's not C. It's either A or B.
Okay. Is access available to the service road at other locations? And then there's a follow-up question to that one. Does the service road need access to this specific intersection?
No, not really. So there are other access points further down, and you probably might need to create some sort of court bowl arrangement so vehicles can actually turn around or some sort of something so they can do a 3-point turn to come back if you're going to close them off. And if you're going to close them off, I'm interested to hear whether that's going to influence exposure, likelihood, or severity of crashes. Other questions?
Signals cost.
Sorry?
Pedestrian operated signals cost?
Right, just pedestrian operated signals would be 779,000.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can. It just
Okay.
blocked
Yeah.
out for a second.
Yeah. Okay, good. What about a price for an offset roundabout?
An offset roundabout. Okay, so I might need a little bit more detail as to what the person means by the offset roundabout. Are they meaning a different shaped roundabout, like an elongated roundabout, or are they talking actually taking a full-size roundabout and just offsetting it? So maybe just type in a little bit more detail on that, please.
Okay. How tall is the drainage underpass?
I like whoever's asking that question. Give them a prize for just the mere fact that I like where they're thinking. It is, it's only a metre high.
Okay.
It looks high from up here, but it's actually only a metre high. It's quite wide.
Okay, so if we can get some more, more info on the offset roundabout. Assuming north is top plan, then southbound movement does not need to use the roundabout, caters for all other movements.
Oh, okay. Yep, I see what you're saying. Yep. So essentially that, have that unimpeded, and then they would merge in from this side. Yeah, that's going to cost 5.5 million. It actually got more expensive by doing that, because we basically now have to fully buy that house and that house in order to fit that in, and still have to move some of this.
Okay.
Cool idea.
Yeah. So cost for extending the drainage culvert, any constraints with changing operation to signalised intersections?
Sorry, say that again.
Cost for extending the drainage culvert.
Yep.
Are there any constraints with changing operation to signalised intersections?
That's all in the work. So no, you can extend the culvert, no worries, and it's $100,000 to do that, and it's not going to impact on any of the intersection signalisation or anything like that.
Can the drain be converted feasibly to allow an underpass for bike and foot traffic?
Yep, it could be. It costs you another 700,000 to do that.
Okay. A cost estimation for a seagull intersection treatment?
Yep. So a seagull will cost you, so an unsignalised seagull will cost you 500,000, and to signalise it will then be another 1.3 million. So you're what, 1.8 million if you wanted to signalise seagull.
Are the majority of crash history where people are trying to turn right from the side road being hit by the through vehicles on northbound, or maybe some southbound as well?
Okay, so I sort of had intentionally not given you the crash history, but I am happy to do it. I was interested to see if anybody wanted it, and we'll talk about that later. So the crash history is serious injuries, 3 like that, and 2 vehicles coming out and being struck by vehicles coming through there. All passenger to vehicle crashes.
Oh, okay. I'm loving all the questions and comments coming through here. It's really good. Can we get a cost, please, on a signalised crossing with a raised crossing?
Yep. So a little bit of drainage works and the like to do there. So 800,000.
Okay. Now, there's some comments here saying it's not safe to put pedestrians or cyclists through a drainage easement.
Okay, we'll chat about that shortly.
Yeah. Does the main road warrant a 70-kilometre limit, or could it be lower?
If you want to make it lower, you propose that and give me some sort of way we might talk to the community about that.
How much would a pedestrian cyclist bridge cost?
2 million on the dot.
Are these HV power lines along the eastern verge?
Yes.
A slip lane into southbound?
Slip lane into southbound. Well, if we assume south is down the road, so that would have to be some sort of if we're talking about a slip lane in like that, or we're talking about an acceleration lane in the middle, like a part of a seagull, the slip lane in on this side is going to cost you 590,000, and this one's going to cost you 600,000, just because you need to do some widening and get some more space in order to fit that in.
Are the flows and turn demands relatively balanced?
No, they're not. So, as I said, there's 1,200 here, and there's 20,000 on this one, and the turn is fairly dominant in this direction during morning peak and out this way in afternoon peak, and much less this turn movement and this turn movement.
Okay,
Whoa. Sorry, my slides just went for a little wander. But all good. We're back.
Going backwards. Okay. Can I get an approximate line of the right of way at the right-hand side of the image?
On the right hand. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, okay, no worries. Approximate. Maybe a little bit in from that. I've taken a little bit of there from on, but yeah, there's a bit of road reserve to play with.
What is the cost for traffic lights and an over-the-road footbridge?
Oh yeah, 3.7 million.
That's out of budget. Okay, how much would it cost to move the bus stop?
200,000.
What have there been crashes with vulnerable road users?
No.
What would be the cost of a compact roundabout?
Yeah, so depending on how you designed it, between 1.5 and 2.1 million. All right.
All right. I think everyone's having a good think now.
All right. So what we want is for you to just type down a few ideas and to just say, you know, okay, so somebody just asked the cost of a compact roundabout. So you're right, compact roundabout dash, and whatever you think that's going to be, change exposure, likelihood, or severity. And then also, you know, any other specifics you might have with that compact roundabout.
Another question that's come through, is there a signalised intersection towards the north of this intersection?
Yes. And to the south.
Okay. Are you going to tell us how far away they are, or?
Yeah, so the one to the north is about 900 meters, 800 meters, and the one to the south is It's like 1 kilometre or almost 2 kilometres actually.
Are there any roundabouts, north or south? And the distance?
Not there are, but they're a long way away. There's multiple signalised intersections between them.
Okay. And does the road, I think just to recap on this one, does the road entering need to remain open, or can the service road be used instead?
It needs to remain open. The service roads could be utilised maybe somehow, but you remember vehicles need to, within the immediate vicinity, be able to turn out and go this way and this way. But yeah, you might have some little arrangement that you're planning with that. And again, I'd want to hear why you're interested in doing that from exposure likelihood or severity perspective.
All right. So maybe a couple minutes now, Ken, and you can jot your answers into the chat or into the Q&A, depending on where your access is. You can select all panelists or all panelists and attendees, whatever you're comfortable with. So maybe, what do we say, a couple of minutes now to jot those in. Tell us if it's affecting exposure, likelihood or severity. And
all right, give you a couple of... And after you've typed it in, you can have a quick stretch if you want to.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, I see some people are putting a few things in. A few more to come shortly. People typing a few ideas in there. And I'm loving the fact that quite a few people that I'm seeing putting stuff in are identifying, is that going to reduce the exposure, the likelihood or the severity or a combination? A few people putting their cost estimations in. This is great. I'm going to read through a few of them shortly, and then we're going to, I suppose, discuss a few of these specific options and why they may or may not align well with safe system principles, or what extra could be done, whether they influence exposure likelihood and or severity. Oh, this group. This is a great group, Kathy. They are doing beautifully here. There are lots of people sharing it with everybody as well. Some people just sending it to Kathy and myself. That's okay. Either is fine. All right, let's have a look here. Okay, so we've got some people who are interested in sort of trying to stop some of the specific movements, so the right turn out, and make a left turn with a U-turn facility close by. Now, that we would classify generally as a reduction in the likelihood of crashes, not necessarily the exposure of crashes. I know you might want to call it exposure because you're thinking of some conflict point removal, but generally in safe system assessment land, we just call it a likelihood reducer because the same amount of vehicles are sort of coming out to make that movement, and we're just altering the likelihood there. Okay, so we've got the idea of a seagull intersection. I'm going to, actually, I'll talk about a seagull very shortly, and its advantages and disadvantages. And with that, some raised platforms across the northbound traffic, and creating the underpass using the drainage structure. Okay, so the comment there has said that the seagull and the raised platform will reduce the severity of crashes, and the drainage structure will alter the exposure to crashes. And that they're both spot on in terms of which they will do. So for those who aren't sort of familiar with this seagull thing we're talking about, a seagull intersection is basically one where you have now, how am I going to go doing this? You sort of have a arrangement like this and an acceleration lane down there. So vehicles coming out, they turn into this, they accelerate down here and they merge in from this side and they turn in there. And the comment here was to also put a raised platform there. So I'm loving this idea of this raised platform here to influence the severity of crashes, because that's particularly important because the bullet vehicle is coming up here and striking target vehicles entering and exiting. That one's going to do the damage. It's the one carrying the kinetic energy and imparting it. So that's a really nice idea. Seagull intersections are quite an interesting beast. And actually, a New Zealander by the name of Shane Turner, who some of you might know, New Zealanders probably know Shane. He did a bit of work, quite a hefty bit of work on seagull intersection effectiveness and safety outcomes like that, and produced a big report on it. Because sometimes in some environments, they can be beneficial, and in a lot of environments, they're bad from a safety perspective. And the reason they're bad is because merging from the right is a very hard move to do and causes a lot of trouble. And that's for a number of reasons. A lot of road users, a lot of drivers don't have the ability to do a really good head check. I mean, they're old, they're frail. It's a really hard move to do from that perspective. Also, any articulated vehicle, a garbage truck, a service vehicle, any vehicle with a cabin there, you're blocked by looking out there. Yes, they've got some mirrors and some secondary mirrors, but that's another challenge there. Where you do get a nice little bit of, I suppose, advantage of a seagull from a safe system perspective is that the angle of that crash that we're talking about is sort of very, very friendly. So you've got that advantage, but you've got sort of the increased likelihood of the crashes sometimes associated with that secondary crash. So there's actually a tool available that assesses whether a seagull intersection would be a suitable arrangement based on a number of key variables. So it's worth plugging that in. But in principle, everything we saw there was really good. So thank you for that. Let me just get that back up. Just wanted to cover that off. Okay, so we've got a few people now who want to signalise this, and they want to signalise it. And now there's a little bit of confusion here as to whether signalisation would influence exposure likelihood or severity. Some people are saying exposure, some people are saying likelihood, some are saying both. Nobody actually I see so far is saying it would influence severity, so that's good. What we tend to say is that the introduction of signalisation reduces the likelihood of crashes. It does nothing for the severity of crashes. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So compact roundabouts, and that would actually influence the severity of crashes. We tend to just hone it down to the severity of crashes within safe system assessments. It doesn't influence the exposure. The only way we would influence exposure in a safe system assessment would be to alter the actual number of vehicles coming in and out. So if you could, through traffic modelling or the like, draw a direct line to say, if we put a roundabout in, we'll actually change the numbers of vehicles entering or the numbers of pedestrians or the number of cyclists, then you could attribute it to exposure. But if you're just talking about that and you go, well, it's going to stay the same, or we don't really have any modelling on this, you just leave your exposure score the same. Okay, so a lot of people looking to signalise this intersection and add pedestrian facilities to reduce the likelihood of crashes for pedestrians as well. people wanting to remove the service roads and utilize that space to get in a compact roundabout to reduce the severity of crashes and maybe a little bit the likelihood, potentially, depending on a few factors. So lots of exciting things there. And I did, a few of them were sort of similar to other. I haven't gone through them all, but I want to delve into a few of these in a bit more detail because I think there's a lot of good thinking going on there. And there was actually quite a few really good questions asked, I think, that indicated you're quite, you're really thinking about that stuff. Sorry, I just want to check the Q&A as well here. So we've got an option for traffic signals with a raised safety platform. And some specifics to use it as a pilot in New South Wales in order to potentially get the community on board because it's a pilot project. That's a beautiful and classic way of getting something in. Just call it a pilot, a trial, calms the community down a bit. So I like that. Pedestrian signals, with some detector loops on the side road to identify queuing and trigger the pedestrian signals. So that is absolutely a possibility. And relocate the bus stop, reduce the likelihood of crashes there. All right, wonderful stuff. So anything we were talking about there, like moving the bus stop or making it less sort of confusing in one way or another, or minimizing the turbulence, we would really generally call that a reduction in the likelihood of crashes. To get a reduction in the severity of crashes, we've got to try and alter the speeds or the angles of crashes. And so anything that was there, like a raised platform or a speed limit reduction or ways to change the angle of the crash, like a roundabout or the like, they're going to reduce the severity of crashes that happen. Exposure is really going to be all about the number of vehicles, the number of pedestrians crossing. So people that were talking about building a pedestrian overpass, yes, that could influence the exposure to crashes if they're going to use it. And I always stress that, if they're going to use it. It's very sad to see millions of dollars spent on those sort of facilities that and then they're not used. Like people are still crossing at grade because, like, why am I going to walk up this extra 300 meters of walking in order to just get there where I want to go? So be careful and target those, but it's all about the intricacies of the design. But it would influence exposure if people use it. Same with the utilization of the structure here to go under. Now, it's interesting that you almost saw like how this plays out when you go to do these sorts of things by the commentary that was happening there. Somebody said, can we utilize this existing structure to put pedestrians and cyclists under? And somebody else came back and said, can't do that, it's not safe. This always fascinates me. I've been involved in these projects and they're brilliant. They've been slightly different to this configuration, but we have a massive amount of infrastructure there that's being utilized in only a small period of our time. It can be a very good asset. It need a bit of work and design and the like, but it could provide a really wonderful facility. Now, I appreciate that people get quite nervous about this idea that pedestrians, cyclists, and this area could flood. Well, we could put in place measures to ensure that happens. I don't think people would go in there if it's starting to flood, but you need to be careful. There is a personal safety concern of long, dark tunnels like this, which you often need to work through. Potentially, we could have a little air opening there or something. But there's a bit to it. But I have seen it used, and I'm happy to send around examples of where it's been done, that the drainage structure or the creek structure or the like has been utilised for a bike or pedestrian facility. And I love it. It's wonderful. I mean, why not? We're separating that traffic. It works well. So it's good to think about. And it alters the exposure to crashes because the number of pedestrians or cyclists crossing is reduced. Okay. So let's have a little move forward here. So we did have a lot of people who wanted to signalize this intersection. And I sympathize, or I don't sympathize. I know why people were wanting that. There's a lot in this intersection that says signalize it from a way of operating. The signal's upstream, the signal's downstream, so continuity of signalization. The unbalanced flow that we talked about is another reason why signalization becomes sort of a preferred option. The land, the services, the structures, it's actually kind of looks like it's been set up a little bit for signalization at some point in the future. Everything's sort of saying signalization. And signalization, we know, is going to reduce the likelihood of crashes. And well done for those who popped that in. But what are we doing for the severity? And in fact, signalization is an interesting one. And here's a little heat map we grabbed off the system of death and serious injury. Fatal FSI or KSI, depending on which jurisdiction you're in, killed, seriously injured, fatal serious injury crashes. And then obviously the more intense the heat there, the higher the amount of death and serious injury at these spots. So it's interesting to look at where these are appearing. Large signalized intersection, signalized, 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 signalized. All our hotspots, that's signalized, are at large signalized intersections. Now, this one I grabbed off out of metropolitan Melbourne, but you can pretty much do this for any medium to large size city. And as you go out and the speeds increase, the death and serious injury appears at the large signalized intersection. And if you take the top 200 intersections for death and serious injury in your jurisdiction, about 90% of them are going to be large signalized intersections. That's pretty scary, isn't it? And you might be saying to yourself, well, why do we get the attention on different ones? And the reason is that by the time we've got to signalization of an intersection, people sort of go, well, we've done everything we can. And there's an interesting statement by Professor Jeremy Woolley from the University of Adelaide when he was doing a review of the national inquiry into the road safety strategy. And he said, traffic signals are the biggest failure of traffic engineers. I was like, wow, that is a provocative statement. Right. And the reason he was saying that is that it was this sort of feeling that once you signalize an intersection, there's nothing more to do until some point in the future, way down the track, you decide to grade separate, do a flyover or the like. And that somehow signalization is this ultimate form of control. And the thing is that we know, and there's such clear evidence that people run the red lights. All right? Intentionally, unintentionally, they will run the red lights and then they crash. And they crash at speed. And the angles are bad. And the pedestrians are in the air. And the cyclists are squeezed through. They do not perform as well as some other intersection types from a safety perspective. Yet, they're sort of one where we've done it and we walk away. So when people rightly pointed out that we were addressing the likelihood of crashes, people were then saying, well, I like it. Some of you are saying, well, roundabout. I want a roundabout because it's going to address the severity of crashes. Why? Because people drive up to a roundabout, they slow down. The angle of crashes is better, right? And you're just getting better safety outcomes for passenger vehicles, and passenger vehicles are our big concern at that intersection. We might have to think about how we're going to get the pedestrians and cyclists through, but this will certainly help out. Now, interestingly, maybe it's not one or the other, right? Maybe it could be a roundabout with some metering. We call it metering. Maybe if one leg is particularly, well, actually, in our example, if we had that site. So this obviously is not the same site. Maybe you would have a set of pedestrian operated signals somewhere down here. And that would do two things. It would give a run for the pedestrians and cyclists to get across the road, at least at this point. It would also meter it. So it would mean that if we had vehicles banking up down here, you could have a loop in the road that triggers these signals, hold there, flush them out, get a few into here, back to green, and then off they go. So you can extend the life of a roundabout for quite a while. But the challenge is often with roundabouts, as to why they wouldn't be used all the time, is that they don't get as much traffic through as quickly. And also there are some challenges with bikes and pedestrians as well in terms of permeability and the like. Safety-wise, cyclists don't seem to fare too well at roundabouts. Pedestrians, I'm still waiting on anybody that has any really poignant, like good research to show this, that pedestrians are at more risk at roundabouts. I know they don't like them. There's research around that and they avoid, but actual risk. But anyway, that's it. So let's keep going there, but that's roundabouts. But why do roundabouts need to be as big as that? Well, we talked about the swept path of a large vehicle. But, there's some pretty small roundabouts. This one, obviously in the UK, just a painted dot. Now, any large vehicle just drives right over the top of it. Is this going to give a safety benefit? Well, one of the big reasons why you get such safety benefit out of these things is nobody believes they have ultimate priority. And that's really important. You're coming up from this direction, you might have to give way, and this one, and this one. But if you are at a intersection where, maybe there was just a give way there, and this went straight through, these vehicles on the through would not slow down, would have no real reason to increase alertness. Likewise, if it was a set of traffic signals and there's a green light, or it's all just running straight, then you believe you have ultimate priority. And the road will say you do, but there's always a chance that could happen. But the idea of disrupting the ultimate priority is a pretty amazing thing. It's this is kind of the UK equivalent of the US four-way stop for anybody who sees that. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. And I think we should be looking a lot more at that in Australia and New Zealand, because everybody's coming up to it, slowing down because they might have to give way. You get some pretty big wins out of that. If you're worried about the straight lines and the angles through there, you can use raised platforms to slow vehicles on the approach. And here's the conflict point diagram. Roundabouts, less conflict points. Each dot there is a way that you can crash. This is passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle. Haven't included cyclists and pedestrians in these ones at this stage. This is signalised. You just have lots more ways to crash. The angles are better. And this one is basically saying that as you drive along, people drive in all sorts of states of consciousness, half asleep, some people are slightly intoxicated, thinking about the fight they've had with their partner, whatever it is. They're zoned out completely. And if you put a set of traffic signals there, some of them just drive straight through the red. And some of you have probably done it and gone, I just run through a red light. Often happens with a set of pedestrian operated signals as well. But if you put a big roundabout, big lump of infrastructure or some infrastructure in the middle of the road, they wake up, they come back to reality and they slow down. It's an amazing feature to get that engagement with the driving cars. So that's a huge win already. So roundabouts provide some wonderful, wonderful features. Now, Kathy, I'll pause there and see if any questions have come in at this stage before I keep maybe going through some other ideas on treatments at this intersection.
Absolutely, questions have come in, Ken. So earlier on, when you were talking about signalised intersections, is it a chicken and egg? Are they signalised because of the high volumes?
Yeah, you've got really good Cole, prize for that person actually, because I do like make a sort of story of it, but they are higher risk due to the volumes. High volume, immediately got higher risk, don't you? And you signalize it because of that volume and maybe danger. But what it's more I was trying to get across was that for some reason in the mind of so many people out there in our industry, they believe once you're signalized, you've done your safety job. Yeah, okay, you might add a mast arm or LEDs or maybe chuck in a red light camera, but it seems to be this switch in the brain that just says, now it's the road user's fault if crashes happen. We've done our job here, and they got to start driving properly and stopping running the red lights. Well, we've got to challenge that because they're not. Like, it's just happening all of the time. And we're seeing lots of severe crashes. So we've got to change something in our system. Yep.
A comment here about preference of a turbo roundabout, but the cost constraints might be an issue.
Yeah, and I'm going to show a turbo roundabout shortly for those who have no idea what that person's talking about, but give them a prize for knowing what a turbo is before we even got there.
All right. Dan's saying congestion can be good, and I'm guessing that's from a safety perspective, that the slower speeds.
Yeah, so I had a chief executive once, and we were doing, well, I was launching a speed zone review that we'd done, the guidelines, new update to the Victorian speed zoning guidelines, and the chief executives there. We had some speed limit reductions that we'd put into that, adding some ability to have some lower speed limits and then media, as they do, congestion, they're all banging on about congestion and things like that. And the chief executive in the media thing goes, well, you know what? Congestion is road safety's friend. And all of us are like, oh, okay. You're not wrong. Like, you actually, when it is very slow and clogged up, you do see a reduction in trauma. But it's not how we want to operate our transport system. We would like it to be a place that moves people safely from A to B in the appropriate form of transport.
Raised safety platforms into roundabouts are great. Yeah.
And especially if you can't get the deflections you want. I'll talk about that a bit shortly as well.
Do pedestrians avoid using roundabouts, prefer to cross it a mid-block?
Yeah, and there is a study, and I think Bruce Corbin, for those who know Bruce, did about pedestrian safety roundabouts. And since roundabouts are safe, are a far safer option for pedestrians than other forms due to the speed reduction and the like. I'm like, I don't know if this is accounted accurately for the alteration in exposure to those crashes. Because if you just do it on crashes, you're like, okay, oh look, all these roundabouts, there's no pedestrian crashes. And it's probably because they're not using it. They go down the road and they cross. And so are we, is it a like-for-like comparison?
Do you know of any state road authorities implementing compact roundabouts on state roads, Ken?
Yeah, my own state road authority, the Victorian one, and I'm going to show you a picture of it shortly. And we've just written the road design note on compact roundabouts, which is just, well, there's a bit of a fight going on between a few individuals on some design specifics. 99% done, just waiting for that a few final things, but I'll show you a picture.
Yeah,
but absolutely.
When you say fight, you mean just finalising some details, is that right?
Sorry, yeah. There's robust debate on a few technical elements happening. We'll edit that recording.
No, we won't. Everybody knows that actually means a fight, but anyway, not to worry. All right, I think that's it for the minute.
Let's keep going here. So somebody mentioned turbo roundabouts, and it's interesting. So roundabouts, they're this wonderful feature, and we know that they're wonderful. Actually, Kathy, there was a nice little podcast that was done, sort of summarising some of the basic reasons why roundabouts are awesome, done by that US mob, because the US are like, oh, have you seen this new thing called a roundabout? And we've had them for like 80 years, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So they're just getting their head around how many lives could be saved in the US and with roundabouts. So maybe we will pop that up if we can work out how to put a podcast into Moodle. It's nice listening. But not all roundabouts are the same. In fact, the more lanes you add, the worse they get in the safety performance generally without doing anything. But these things called turbo roundabouts actually bring safety performance back in line with a single lane roundabout. You can basically use speed as a proxy for safety generally through most intersections or in most things. So you've got inner radius, so small radius, and then adding lanes becomes really quite a challenge. So turbo roundabouts perform really well. Turbo roundabout basically has a raised separator on the approach and a raised separator within the circulating carriageway. So if you want to turn right, you sort of get in the right lane here and you get into the middle part, you come around and you go out. You go straight, you can do it from either lane. To go to left, you've got to be in the left lane there and you go out. Like the cycle facilities here, it's pretty nice. But anyway, here's another turbo roundabout. And so what I also like of this aerial image is look at the conflict happening here and look at the angle of that. Now, we know that the vehicles have slowed down. The white vehicle would have slowed down and the others made this mistake and entered the intersection. And we know that if the crash was going to happen, it would be nice, sort of shallow angle, low speed. It's going to be safe, right? Same mistake by old truck driver here. If they had pulled out at a signalised intersection or run the red on a signalised, and it would have been high speed, bad angle, or even like a give-way control. And turbo roundabouts can be pretty big. You know, here's another one out of the Netherlands, and I was talking to a Dutch engineer about this intersection. I said, "Oh, this just fascinates me. I've not seen it live, but I've seen this." And I was saying, you know, in Australia or probably New Zealand as well, yeah, definitely. This would either be a grade separated interchange, or it would be a large signalised intersection. And the response from the Dutch engineer was, "Oh, but what about all the death and serious injury?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's just like it appears to be accepted." He's just blew his mind. Why would you do that? Why would you put your community at that risk? And so this is where they're trying to get large volumes through this signalised intersection. So I think it's fascinating. I mean, it's signalised, but it's also got these features to slow vehicles and improve angles. And there's lots of people doing pretty creative things now, trying to get intersections up and running that cater for higher capacity but have the features of roundabouts. And this is called the cut-through roundabout. It's not actually been built. This is an attempt to get it through. But the idea being that if any vehicle coming through here is going to have to slow down, alter their angle to go through, and you get all of those benefits. So that's pretty wonderful. I'm just going to pause there, Kathy, because I thought that this sparked an idea for me to try and dig something out of an archive that I've got. I'm just actually not sure where it would be. Anyway, any questions come up at this stage?
There was a question earlier about doing the raised platform signalised intersection at that previous intersection. Can you have a raised speed control device in a 70 km/h zone? Yeah,
absolutely. Not traditionally, but there's lots of stuff now emerging and showing that you can. And we're going to share a Ostro's report that recently came out on raised safety platforms, and there's pretty exciting stuff in there. I just want to show this. This whole sort of signalised intersection thing got me thinking of back to my time at the Road Authority, and what I was in charge of at one point was there was a congestion easing program. So big sway of funding comes in to ease congestion in Melbourne, and so it's given, regions, they were identifying spots that were causing congestion. And often they were intersections that had roundabouts, and the roundabouts couldn't, during a couple of hours, peak hour in the morning and afternoon, it was saturated. It was causing trouble. And so their response was to rip it out and put a set of traffic signals in. And the modelling and everything showed that this would really improve congestion during those periods. And they were getting those. They were to go through the road safety department where I was for review and be approved, and off they'd go. And they were expecting that we would, in the road safety department, review them for things like, okay, are the signals, is the phasing right? Have they got mast arms? Is the line marking right? Is everything looking good? But I started producing this memo, and let's just share this. So I started producing this memo. So this was I just grabbed the template of it. So from road safety department, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go. Road safety statement. The road safety department has analysed this project as increasing crashes as follows. Project life, 20 years. So, number of deaths attributed to this project, 2.3. I put little people there to remind them we're killing people here. Number of serious injuries attributed to this project, 12.6. And a statement of acceptance. Statement of acceptance. The above road trauma is accepted by, and then send it back and said, all right, sign that off, regional manager, regional director. Now this caused trouble, some controversy, certainly got hauled into executive director's office and said, you have to stop sending this. This is, you're boiling a very complex task of managing a road system into some key things that are, it's not appropriate. We have a responsibility to think holistically. We've got to balance road safety with other, transport objectives. And you sort of say, well, no, somebody's made a decision here. They've gone, we can get more capacity and throughput in this intersection, but we'll have to kill a few and seriously injure some of our community to do so. And if that's a decision people are comfortable making, they can sign that off, and we can have then a different debate. But let's not hide from the fact. Let's not pretend these signals are going to operate as safely as that roundabout. And so I think a comment's just come in. No one from New South Wales, Transport for New South Wales, ever signed that. Nobody from Vic Roads ever signed that either. And it was just removed. And and I've kept a few copies of unsigned ones. But I think we need to challenge like what we know is going to be the outcome, even if if we say, well, the answer is, well, we need to work on stop people running red lights and stop people doing this. Yeah, we've got to continue to do that, but it's going to happen. And that's a real safe system sort of in-your-face discussion that needs to happen. Any more comments on that? Sorry, I've gone on a tangent, Kathy.
Yeah, no, you have, Ken. But yeah, I start to wonder if you left willingly from Vic Roads, or if
I was not fired.
maybe you were just politely asked to leave. Anyway, not to worry. An earlier comment about the raised platforms, A-double and PBS vehicles would not be happy with raised road sections. They can be a problem for livestock transport as it causes injury to animals.
That is certainly one of the features you need to be delving into in the design of them and how they operate. Let's talk a little bit about those now. So raised safety platforms, for those who are going, what do they actually mean by that? They're kind of like an urban speed hump, but the grades are less. And in fact, you can alter the grade. So they're not like hitting this speed hump. You can actually sort of navigate them quite gently if you're going at the appropriate speeds. And so here's sort of Sweden's sort of original ones. You can see it's a gentle raise. That's actually what the region proposed at this intersection that you're looking at. So they said, well, signals are the right answer for all of these reasons, which we sort of talked about before. But they were not comfortable in leaving bullet vehicle speeds so high at this 70. and up the, out the road are the signals, and those signals have some serious injury crashes that have happened, as of the ones down the road. And they know so they've taken this sort of safe system analysis and said, no, we need to get speeds down within these tolerable levels. And they've come up with this sort of artistic impression. Now, prize for the person who can tell me, what do you think? So I've said you can design these to achieve a specific speed. What speed do you think that they tried to design these to achieve? What speed? All right. So Sean gets a prize for 50. Now, why 50? Well, the predominant concern that the region had here was right angle crashes, vehicles coming out and going in, being struck by the bullet vehicle, right? And we know that the tolerable threshold speed for right angle crashes between passenger vehicles was 50. You could go back to your tables and all that stuff that I showed you. 50 is the speed that they were targeting. Now, if they wanted to, make it really great for pedestrians, safe pedestrians and cyclists as well, maybe they'd go to 30. But for this one, that was their concern, and that was what they were trying to address. Now, look, they've not raised it through the whole intersection, because these vehicles coming out and going in, they're not the bullet vehicle. They're not the one that needs speed washed off, right? They're the target vehicle. This is where the energy is. Not the one that's turning. These vehicles are the ones. Now, there's some cyclist pedestrian challenges here, but we'll ignore that until next module. We're talking lots about cyclists and pedestrians. Anyway, they built it, and there you go. Advisory speeds 50. Shallow ramps just to wash that speed off. There it is. All right. And now we've addressed the likelihood of crashes through the signals and the severity by the raised platform, which quite a few of you were doing from the start. Look at this. What a picture. Braking, slowing down, green light. Amazing. All right. So we've just brought signals into having something to engage with the driver to slow the vehicles to appropriate levels at that specific conflict point. And actually, it raising an intersection actually reduces your dilemma zone. So the dilemma zone is the period in time and space when you see an orange light where you're in a dilemma. Do I put the foot down or do I brake? I'm sure you've been in the dilemma zone. And what you do, if you have a raised platform, it reduces your dilemma zone. People are far more likely to hit the brakes. And that's a good thing for road safety. You don't like a large dilemma zone. There's other things you can do as well. Yes, you have to think about other vehicles, but interestingly, there's so much more research and evidence coming forward now to show that this is not the end of the world for heavy vehicles, for buses, for motorcyclists, for others. There's so much fear of this without actually knowing it. We had people in the early ones of these saying, you can't possibly do that. People will hit it, Dukes of Hazzard, flying off into the roadside. All the trucks going through here are going to break everything that they've got they're carrying and bruise the fruit, and the livestock lobby. The thing is that if these are driven at the appropriate speed, they're actually quite a gentle maneuver. So, without going into a whole training course on race safety platforms, what we'll do is we'll share the Austroads document on race safety platforms, which has wonderful information in it, and we can point you at some other things as well. But I do love seeing now that here's an intersection in Victoria, Dalton Childs Road, for those who know it. It was a roundabout. Congestion program, ripped the roundabout out, replaced with traffic signals. But they did get mandated to also put raised platforms or keep vehicle speeds down to 50. I'd like to see this 30 or 20 even for the slip lane, but anyway, that's a debate for another time. But the general principle is great, okay? Trying to at least keep the safety benefit, if not make it better.
Ken, just on the previous one, was there a red light camera there as well?
No.
Oh, not that one, that one.
Yeah, no red light camera at. So that was Surf Coast Kidman Avenue, which was the first of the raised stacking platforms on major arterials, 20,000 vehicles a day. This one, Dalton Drive, I think Dalton Road carries 56,000 vehicles a day, emergency vehicles, it's the major run through, buses, heavy vehicles, a lot, so people get pretty scared about this, or a lot of jurisdictions. And it was the same. Like when I started my engineering, if I said, oh, why don't we do like some sort of vertical deflection on this arterial highway, I would have been kicked out of the building. Like they would have, engineers would have just gone berserk. Like you can't do that, But we're in a very different world now. There are design challenges with things. So read those documents if you're interested. But the principle is so good. We need to slow vehicles through these highly dangerous conflict points where potential kinetic energy transfer is huge. I'm going to keep moving on, Catherine. Again, the same sort of thinking applies at some of these other intersections. I mean, this one is the site where they got 100 km/h roads in both directions. You've got the arterial road sort of goes around this corner. This is a Telstra Exchange building. The cost to move that was obscene. To fit a full-size roundabout in here was just so expensive because you had to remove that, you had to acquire a heap of this land and that land, and it was all hard. So this region, instead of just reverting back to what would usually happen, would be like a right turn lane, or some more rumble strips on the approach, or maybe an active warning sign, which would all reduce the likelihood of crashes. We've got to get that severity of crash down. And so this is one where they did come up with this compact roundabout. And these are, it's a major, decently major arterial road. Not as big as some of the ones we were just talking about. So this is down the Gippsland area. So I'm sure John Ernst knows this one. And again, so they've not got the deflection, the reverse curves, which you would usually have on the approach to a roundabout to slow vehicles down. Instead, they've gone with raised platforms, raising, and these again are shallow raised. And then a small roundabout, very tiny little roundabout in the middle there, and a big concrete apron around it. And that gives the large vehicles the ability to sort of sweep around there. So that one also has been built, and you can see there, slowing the vehicles on the approach, raising that one, slowing the vehicles, and my lines are moving with it. Of course they are. You can see the little roundabout in the middle and the big concrete apron, so the large vehicles sort of sweep around there. Let's do a little quiz, Kathy, and then I better hurry up and move things along. So hopefully a quiz will pop up on your screen shortly. Oh, okay. True or false? Traffic signals are not safe system. True, false, unintelligible question. Unintelligible meaning that doesn't make much sense the way it's been written or whatever you're talking about.
So Ken, we've got about 25 minutes to go.
Yeah, and I need to give time at the end here for you to explain, or us to explain the assignment. So if you can get that up and ready to go, Kathy, to save us a minute.
Sure thing. And I might just close that one off now. We've almost got everyone there.
Right, good. Okay. Well, traffic signals are not safe systems. So I'm glad we put this question up, because there's a bit of a spread there: true, false, and unintelligible. Well, I suppose unintelligible question would be a good answer here, because the first thing that's unintelligible about this, or doesn't, I mean, we've put in there safe system as some binary term. Is it safe system? Is it not safe system? All right? No, and we don't talk about that. We say, traffic signals align highly or don't align so high. The other thing is this: it is completely void of any context. Okay? Traffic signals can align really well with safe system principles in some contexts, some situations, and not so well in other contexts and situations. And so one of the reasons I pop that up there is that some people have come out of this course and gone, we can't do any more traffic signals ever again, because then they're not safe systems. I'm like, whoa, okay, misinterpreted what we were trying to get across here. And yeah, they can be very, very good in the right situations. And let's think about the speed, the energy, the fact that people will make mistakes. So how do you minimize and manage those mistakes? So I suppose if you were thinking in one context, it could have been true, or another context could have been false or unintelligible, because you said whoever wrote this question was an idiot, being me. Okay. Lane departure. Here we go. We've got a road. It extends for about 400 kilometres. It's got a dividing line, sometimes overtaking opportunities, sometimes not. It's got the occasional very low volume intersection, property access. It's got a sealed shoulder, and yeah, it goes on and on and on and on. Occasionally got an overtaking lane, and sometimes. So without knowing anything more, just type in, what do you think the source of death and serious injury is, in terms of the types of crashes that we would be expecting to see on these roads? Any ideas there? All right, look at this. We didn't need to do any crash analysis on this, did we? Because you're all spot on. Run off road, head-on crashes. Absolutely. And people have sort of put in some of the contributing factors, fatigue in there as well. This is just like, we know it. We know these crashes are going to happen. Interesting on this diagram, and somebody's just done it, some people get fixated on this little kink in the road, which I don't know why it's there. It's probably some historic reason why it's had to do that. A lot of roads are just dead straight for these long periods. There will be a little spike in risk there, but the risk remains, all through here and all through here. And it's just because we are running vehicles at high speeds, separated only by a white line, nothing separating them from the trees, the runabout areas and the like. And we know people are going to fall asleep, they're going to get distracted, they're going to leave their lane, and crashes are going to happen. And the crash mechanics of a driver on these roads that yes, falls asleep, is quite interesting. The way this happens is usually that a driver's driving along and they fall asleep and they slowly drift off to the left. And I haven't drawn that very well. They just drift off to the left, just because the road, because of drainage, sort of just slowly moves them over to the left. Now, often people think, oh, then they just hit a tree. Well, no, that tends to not be what happens. They tend to wake up at some point as they're hitting an unsealed shoulder or the roadside bit or the like, and yank the wheel back to get back on the road. As you would. You drive along 100, 110 kilometres an hour, 100 kilometres an hour, and you are not on the road, or you are heading towards trees. That's how you wake up. Yank the wheel back, or you're distracted and you turn back and oh my God, right? And then you can start to get yawing. Okay, yawing is as the vehicle starts to slide, right? And this is where we say, all hell breaks loose. So Some vehicles at that point keep sliding, hit a tree. Some regain traction, shoot across the road, head-on crash. Some get to the other side of the road. Some go back onto the road and then overcorrect again. So what we call a double yaw crash. So they've yawed one way and they yaw the other way, and then they'll go back out. So there's this huge variety of things that happen, but they often start with that gentle drift off. Yawing is particularly dangerous because what happens is then you're exposing the side of the vehicle to different forces. And if there's nothing to hit there, you actually start to build up dirt, and the vehicle has a much better chance of rolling over as you're yawing. And we know that those point source hazards are the most highest transfer of energy, highest impact there. And there's the video of the side impact pole test. This is the one, the previous one. This is like a couple of years old, 29 kilometre per hour. It's gone up to 32 kilometres per hour. But this little video, which some of you might have seen, it was predicted the impact speed at about 60 kilometres per hour. So hopefully this will play for you. I'll just have to. So you can see the violence in that crash. And this is predicted at 60 kilometres per hour. It just obliterates the vehicle. So a point source hazard, and that's a tree, a power pole, or the like, it just imparts huge amounts of energy to specific points. And there is a little bit of a tendency of a passenger vehicle to wrap around it, as this one has, the heads to be drawn to the solid object, but hugely violent events. But clearing all those point source hazards doesn't necessarily give us this, completely safe situation. This is some research that was done, runoff road casualty crashes per 100 million VKT, prize for the first person to write in what VKT stands for. So runoff road casualty crashes, and you'll see that this is clear zone, right? Clear zone being an area free of point source fixed hazards. So Sarah got in there for prize, Kathy, with vehicle kilometres travelled. So this sort of brings it back to an exposure metric that we can compare. So this is, crashes per vehicle exposed to that crash. So it's a nice, you can compare road to road by VKTs because it takes volume out of it. But what we see is that runoff road casualty crashes comes down, but it sort of flattens out, it asymptotes out. At around this 4 casualty crashes per VKT, no matter how much we clear the roadside of hazards. And this is due to rollover crashes and vehicles that just go way, way beyond whatever we're clearing. So the idea of a clear zone or just clearing your roadside of hazards is not necessarily a safe place to be because vehicles go beyond it or they roll over. And so probably maybe 15 years ago or 10 years ago even, you would have said that, well, we've got nothing better, right? Because we can put some guardrail in, but it's got some challenges, it's something for people to hit, and it's got these different challenges. And it'd be safer to provide these cleared areas. Well, barrier technology has just gone off the charts. It's amazing how good these barriers are engineered and designed now for this. And it's actually now a friendlier thing, as crazy as this sounds, to have a barrier at between 4 and 6 meters off the edge line than it is to provide a cleared area back 15 meters. Because that 15 meters of cleared area provides the vehicle chance to roll over and have crashes there or go beyond that. And so, it's slightly counterintuitive to a lot of people, but it is higher aligned with safe system principles to have that continuous barrier system. Certainly for most roads where passenger vehicle risk of run-off road crashes is our biggest concern, and they are like way our biggest run-off road representation of passenger vehicles. Clearing the roadside of fixed hazards, you get a really great, huge benefit for this 4 to 5 metre of cleared area, and it starts to drop off after that. Interestingly, about within a year ago, this is how the Austroads Guide to Road Design Part 6 was telling us to basically design a new road. Maybe you'd want to remove that, but big cleared area, separation of carriageways, big sealed shoulder, 3.5 metre wide lanes, audio tactile. Wow, these are truck rumble strips. We just did a little safe system snippet on those. So that's probably not in the Austroads Guide. They were. And trees at your clear zone. Now, this is the Hume Freeway, Benalla Bypass, and built whatever it was 20 years ago or something like that. But there's a huge amount of death and serious injury along here. People are leaving the road, making it to the other carriageway, hitting vehicles, running off the road, hitting trees. All right. And you sort of think, wow, even within a year ago, we would have designed a new road like that. And it really, it's just so sad to see. We build billions of dollars on new roads and, build a median like this, maybe even narrower, nothing in the middle. And then within 6 months of it opening, a vehicle goes straight across and hits another vehicle, kills a family. That's happening out there. Imagine if you built a new multi-billion-dollar train line, and within that time, a family was killed on it. There'd be, absolute outrage. Anyway. The new part. Yep.
Sorry. What about sand traps?
Yeah. So I did coordinate a study on use of vegetation and use of different surfacing treatments in run-out areas, because it can work well on a racetrack and those sorts of things. In theory, it can be done, but the big actual practical application challenge of it is the maintenance of these features, because over time they'll get hard and they won't operate in that way. Same with vegetation; it'll either grow or you get different species. There are some vegetations that show potential for that. You've got to think about motorcyclists as well, heavy vehicles. How does it all? So it's quite a complicated beast. I mean, yes, you could do it, but it would need the investment as well with some extra stuff. Also, the rollover risk still is a little bit present in some of that. The new Part 6A is interesting. It does a good job in moving us a bit forward. Have a read of that if you're in the space. But here's a little diagram we whipped up to sort of say your alignment with safe system principles. High alignment with safe system principles, low alignment with safe system principles. And we're seeing full containment. Barrier system, barrier system, barrier system. Some people call it the bumper bowling of roads. You leave the road, it's going to keep you within that. That's our high alignment with safe system principles. It's just saying people are going to fall asleep. they're going to leave the road. They're going to leave their lane. They're going to, so let's manage the energy. And down to, obviously not separated. Now, there's a bit of interestingness in the middle here with, do you go a wide? Is it better to have a central barrier or outer barriers? And, there's some New Zealand, there's research from a few different places showing somewhere around between 4,000 and 6,000 AADT. It's actually a better investment to, once you're above that, to put a central barrier system. If you're below that, to have outer barrier systems. But ideally, we would be up in having both. And then there's lots of cross sections out there, but I do like this one. I thought was pretty good and worthy of showing, because it actually puts a star rating there as well. It says this is a 4-star road, so it's pretty good. It's got this big median, and it's got some roadside, and it's got 2 lanes in each direction. But this is 5-star, right? When you've got the flexible barrier system in the middle, and you've got the barrier system, and you've got the barrier system, right? That's 5-star. And look at the land take. not going to be cheap. It would likely be a lot cheaper to build a new road like this than it would like this, because you wouldn't have to buy a whole lot of land. Well, potentially, that'd be case specific, obviously. So achieving our highest alignment with safe system principles is not necessarily always the more expensive option. Anyway, there's lots of those in there. I'm not going to run through those, and I probably won't run through this, because all I want to say is that you've got to be very careful when you're into the design. So in theory, yes, we want to go these long continuous barrier segments, but we've got to think about how they're used and some of the challenges. That will provide us a safer outcome. Obviously, the community will be very angry, or people will get very angry if they don't have an area to pull over and the like. It presents some risk in its own right as well. And a couple of slides just to finish on. And it's not that I want to talk about a specific product as such, but I want to talk about the theory of managing energy and trying to, manage absorption of energy. And this one is talking about a Raptor cushion, which is a specific product. I can't even remember who sells the product, but this is what a Raptor cushion looks like. And it sits around a power pole or any point source. So it could sit around a tree. I've never seen it sit around a tree, but in theory you could. And what it does is it has a bit of cushioning, right? But its actual way to manage energy is when struck, it rotates. So a bit like they tell you in martial arts is that you deflect the energy of the punch away from. Not that I've ever done martial arts in my life, but that's what they say in the movies. But so the idea is that if your vehicle sliding, you hit it, and due to the design and the angle of it, it sort of rotates it and it moves the energy along and slows you down. And I just think it's a wonderful little bit of engineering to manage energy in these confined spaces. Barriers work better because they deflect you along, but this one you wouldn't have enough space for a barrier. And this is a forensic crash investigation of a Raptor cushion that was struck by a vehicle at about 92 kilometres an hour, they estimate. Old Ford, 4 male passengers, 2 in the morning. So mistakes were being made. And they were going high speed in a fairly urban area, and they left the road. They hit this power pole, which luckily had a Raptor on it. And they all they had minor injuries. They went to hospital, but they are living normal, healthy lives and being productive in society now, assuming that they're being productive in society. But they're so their mistake has not cost them their lives. And I think the forensic investigation report said that had that Raptor not been there, there would be death or high level serious injuries involved. So again, the innovation, the possibility we have out there. I think, Kathy, it's probably an opportunity now for me to just answer any final questions and for you to show people where to go. There's a huge amount there. We could talk for days and days, in fact, decades on all of those topics, because there's so much in there. I just wanted to touch on a few of the principles.
Yes, you could talk for a long time, Ken. So a couple of questions. Are there any Raptor type products available or in development for high speed roads?
Yeah, so interestingly, Raptors are utilised in some jurisdictions up to 80 kilometres per hour. Some jurisdictions only accept them up to 60 kilometres per hour. So I think that there is still big potential with that. There are a couple of short systems that are going through ASBAP, the Australian Safety Barrier Assessment Panel, at the moment, which are like barrier systems, but sure, they're almost like crash cushions on each side, but it's a specific product. So I think we're going to be seeing some more stuff, because it comes up so often that you've got a specific hazard and you don't have enough space either side, but it's a high-speed environment, and how to deal with that is such a challenge. So the big multinational barrier roadside product people are coming up with options.
Are there any alternative safety mechanisms in case wire rope barrier treatments fail, assuming you cannot apply any line treatments that audible impact surrounding residences or run-out road widening due to the lack of road reserve? What would be a good alternative?
Well, there's obviously many barrier types. I'm particularly fond of flexible W-beam systems, weak post W-beam systems at the moment for a variety of reasons: maintenance, ability to add motorcycle underrun protection, and the like. So there's another one as compared to wire rope, which we still classify as a flexible barrier system. It performs really, really well. And then, so you've got your sort of audio tactile edge line, which produces noise, and the surrounding resonance can be an issue. Although my favorite thing I've seen in a program, one of my favorite things, is when the Victorian government was doing the rollout of the black audio tactile program. So that's it was black, and it was in between the center line and the like. They just rolled it out everywhere on all the roads that they wanted. They didn't worry about where houses were or weren't, and they didn't, get too concerned about that. And then they just simply had a crew that, when complaints came in, they went out and scoured them off in that section, rather than going the opposite, which is where we, calculate a 200 meter or 500 meter radius around each one, and you basically start to go, well, we're hardly going to get this in anywhere. But it's actually only a few of them that were actually causing issues. I think that was pretty cool. But anyway, sealed shoulders and good delineation bring the likelihood down, but you've really got to have that barrier system or something to absorb and manage energy if you want to get the severity down as well.
Thanks, Ken. I'm going to go on a tangent there. I used to work for a bank a long time ago, and their policy was charge everyone a fee and then refund those who complain. So, probably shouldn't have said that. What is the effect?
Which bad?
No, that's terrible. Anyway, what is the effectiveness of wire rope for trucks?
Oh yeah, good question. So the barrier test protocol, we've just moved into a new test protocol called MASH, the Manual for Assessing Safety Hardware. It's a crash test at its a MASH test level for wire rope safety barrier system. Is really only tested with a 10-ton truck at 25-degree angle, 100 kilometers per hour. So you can't expect it to contain much more than that at those high impact angles. But we have seen some wire rope systems perform really well on more shallow angle crashes. But if you have particular truck concern, heavy vehicle concern, probably a wire rope system is not your particular one to go with. But in most situations, trucks are not leaving the road. They do leave the road, but they're generally pretty good. And like passenger vehicles are just huge in terms of the runoff road crash problem. You've got to do a bit of thinking about that. There's a lot packed into barrier choice, design, and the like. It's a huge topic in its own right. But Kathy, you better explain the assignment.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just going to share my screen and bring that one up. You can see that one. So we're in module 2 of Moodle here. So we've found most of those things that you talked about the podcast on roundabouts. It's called Should Traffic Lights Be Banned? The Austroads report on the implementation of raised safety platforms. There's also a webinar that matches that one. I found that Seagulls paper you spoke about. But here we are. So module 2 quiz, much the same as module 1 quiz, just a few multiple choice questions, and your module 2 assignment, which is due before our next session, which is Tuesday the 1st at midnight. So what you do is you jump in to here in Moodle and you click on the assignment there, and I think I've already got that one ready to, sort of had it ready to go. Okay, can we see that one okay?
Yep. So what you're going to do is, we've got the steps marked there, but the first thing you're going to do is think of an intersection. This could be any intersection you want. It could be the one outside the front of your house. It could be the one you think about on holiday. It could be the intersection you hate most in your town, whatever it is. Okay, and then you're going to fill out anything that's highlighted yellow. So first start with your name, and then give us a link to that intersection, a Street View link, or maybe even just write where the intersection is. So we can look it up on Street View and just have a look at it ourselves when we go to market, and go down a bit further. Then what we want you to do is put in between 1 and 3 factors that influence the exposure to crashes at that intersection as it is now, right? And remember, in what we're talking about there are numbers. What is influencing the number of vehicles? So it could, what is influencing the number of pedestrians crossing, the number of cyclists, the number of vehicles through there? So it could be the number of legs, it could be, the big population, whatever it is. Then we want you to go over to likelihood and say, what are between 1 and 3 factors that influence the likelihood of crashes at this spot? Now that could be anything like what type of controls there are. Is it stop? Is it give way? Is it what is the sight distance? What is the surface conditions? Is there a see-through effect? All of these things, any of these things, between 1 and 3 of those factors. And then we do the same for severity. So what is influencing the severity of any crash that does occur? And so that one's going to be speed, angles. It's going to be the presence of vulnerable road users potentially. So, are they old pedestrians? It could be the percentage of heavy vehicles there. It can be more severe if a heavy vehicle's involved. Then once you've done that, between 1 and 3, we just want one thing only that you could change, which would alter the exposure. So that could be ways to reduce the number of vehicles, number of pedestrians, number of cyclists, number of motorcyclists. Something would have to, really that one, you're talking grade separation, you're talking blocking things off the line. Likelihood, anything you could do to lessen the chance that crashes are going to happen. And severity, when crashes happen, how do you make them less severe? And that's it. All right. And you can do this for any intersection. I think a question came in, does it have to be Australia, New Zealand? No. I don't know. Go to Brazil. I'm happy to look at an intersection in Brazil if you want. What is the exposure, the likelihood, the severity? What's influencing those? And what can we do to alter those? And this one, you got free rein. No budget limitations. Just we are marking you on the ability to categorize here. Are those things that would influence exposure, likelihood, severity? And then you ideally PDF it, and then you just submit it. You just upload it into Moodle. So you save it onto your desktop somewhere and then upload it to Moodle, and then we'll mark it.
And then there are also some safe system assessment fact sheets, which you've also got a hard copy of, but these ones here might help you working out exposure, likelihood and severity as well.
But hopefully this will only take you 10, 15 minutes at most, because you can just whip through and you can do it, at your desk, Street View, no worries. Thank you very much. We've gone 2 minutes over and we'll finish there, but happy to take any questions outside the session. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.